My Malinois is, well, I love the energy and the drive, and they just want to work. You know, he'll lay there, be sound asleep, and I'll be like, okay, bud, let's go. And boom, he's ready to go, you know, redlining RPMs, and he's ready. And he'll work like crazy, and then I can put him back, and he just chills out again. I don't know if that's typical with all Malinois, but it is with mine, and he's very like affectionate. We always call him he's a social whore. You come to my house, he's going to be in your lap.
Right. All right, we're recording. So it's funny. We got Janet sitting over there, and Avi Cohen, the legendary Avi Cohen, who brought Frank here, right? And we can't see him, but he's there. And we're here to talk about dogs. Frank Phillips, great to have you here. We've never met before, and I'm intrigued because Avi spoke so highly of you. And I'm more intrigued because the conversation we just had upstairs, which I think was pretty cool. You're a judge, but also a very, very active competitor.
Correct.
It's IGP now.
Correct.
Right?
They changed the name.
Yeah, we're going to talk about why all these changes happened, right? But what really intrigues me about you is something you said that I think was really powerful. And you just love dogs.
Yeah.
Like my dogs basically molested you when you came in the door. And a lot of people are a little standoffish. I mean, I don't care personally. But you were like, oh, no, let him go. And you're hugging him, kissing him, and in him. Is that something rare you see nowadays from other people who compete in sports, or no?
I don't know if I'd say it's rare. I think most people got into the sport because they wanted to do something fun with their dog. I think some people lose sight of that when they get too competitive and it becomes about winning and not about doing something with your dog. And I think once I don't know, I guess like for me, I get to a point where I want a certain caliber of dog. And then I love him still. He's still my dog. And we hang out in the house and I go for walks. And I think it's a big part of the relationship. And I think it's a big part of, putting on that picture that everyone wants to see. I think a big part of it is just letting him be a dog sometimes and hanging out with him and having fun stuff, just being a dog.
Yeah. That's something I think is so important. My work goes into, I did some obedience stuff, but that's not my specialty. But I see these dogs that end up in shelters a lot, right?
Yeah.
And I have such a penchant for just loving dogs. And that's been my big thing is like, how much can you possibly love a dog and not give up on them? And one of the things that I want to kind of ask you about, because you see this as a competitor and as a judge, what happens to those people who want to get in the sport? I'm going to be an IPO champion. I'm going to be an IGP champion. And they get the wrong dog. And then they either put too much pressure on the dog and the dog fails, or the dog's just not cut out for it and the dog fails. And then they start rehoming dogs and rehoming dogs and rehoming dogs. Like, does that mess you up a little bit in the head a little bit?
A little bit, but sometimes also, I will say this too. I mean, I've taken a couple young dogs, two, and that just weren't ready to compete at the level I was at. And actually, I've had three. And the first one, I didn't. I stuck with him, and I trained him to a 3. I took him to the national championships. I got him to the world qualifier trial, which is above the national championships. And then, for me, that was his 300 points. That was as high as he could go, and he was giving me everything he had. But I also know that there were times where I'd come home from training going, geez, I just wish he had more. I wish he had more. And so the next time I got a dog like that, I sold him to somebody whose goals were club level, and they love him, and it's a great life for the dog, and I think it worked out better for everybody.
Talk about that, because that's such an important term, and I use it a lot, but I'm not really able to define it. There are regular sport, there's fun dogs, there's club level dogs, and then there's serious dogs.
Yep.
Talk about the difference in those three, and what is that? What is the it factor in there?
We always have a few sayings in my club. You want to be in a Formula One race, you need a Formula One car.
Right.
And, or you want to be in the Nationals, he needs to be a lion. You need a dog that has power and intensity and great nerves. I mean, I'll give you a little example. We go to the World Championships in the Netherlands, and it's a 15,000 seat soccer stadium. And we have to leave the ball outside the stadium, walk through a 60-foot long tunnel. Then there's a 20-foot wide moat all the way around the field to keep the soccer hooligans off with a little aluminum bridge. And you have to wait there for about 10 minutes. Then you walk onto the field. Now you have to do obedience. The dog has to have great nerves. I almost, had a problem.
Right.
And the dog has to have great nerves and have all that. And then when you say, hey, let's go, he has to go, yeah, let's go. And he has to ignore this giant stadium you just walked into with all these people. In some of the world championships, there's 4,000 or 5,000 people in the stands. How do you train that? I want to get 4,000 of my closest friends to come hang out at training.
Right.
That just doesn't happen. You can't.
How much of that do you think is genetic? How much do you think of it is training?
That is genetic, 100%. They have the nerves and the power and the drive to be able to walk in there and just ignore it all. That's where that happens when the sperm hit the egg. You can ruin it, but you can't create it.
Great point. I love that. That's a really good point. When you talk about that, you have a Mallee, and we talked about our love for both Mallees and Shepherds, and
I have both.
That's what I'm saying. You have a Mallee and Shepherd. I do too, and I love the differences. I really embrace the differences in the two dogs. About your Mallee, right? You're saying this dog comes from these lines. Does that dog have it as much as your dog Cliff, who you talked about, who's just iconic?
Well, I've made the world championships the last 2 years in a row. I haven't got a chance to go compete because of COVID. They've canceled it both years, but I don't know if he's top 3 in the world, but he definitely can go there, and he gives me everything he's got. I'd like to see if he can make the top 20 and maybe make that final day, but I don't know. But Cliff was something very, very special.
Let's talk about Cliff. Just tell me how you found, just tell me his story, because he seems to be like your heart dog, your dog that really just connected with you.
Oh yeah, I love that dog.
Yeah, tell me about him. I mean,
Well, the breeder called me when he was 6 months old and said, I have a dog you would love. And I said, I got a dog. I'm good. Thanks anyway, And then he called me back a couple weeks later and said, no, man, I really think you and this dog would be great together. And I said, I really appreciate it, but I have a dog. Let me see, how much do you want for him? I'll see if I can find somebody, that I know anybody. Then he called me back on Christmas Eve day. And he was like, dude, I really think you and this dog would just click. I really want you to have him. I'll give him to you. And I went, dude, I got a dog. Yeah, thanks anyway,
Right.
Then the next day I'm sitting in the hot tub drinking a beer and I'm talking, and I said, yeah. And they said, well, T. Floyd, he was the breeder, and he's, an icon in the sport, won multiple national championships, been to multiple world championships, finished top 5 in the worlds. And, she looked at me and said, T. Floyd said he has a dog that he thinks is a podium dog and it'd be perfect for you, and he'd give him to you for free, and you said no. And I was like, yep, that was pretty stupid. So the next, I'm like, it's Christmas Day. I can't call him. I called him the next day. And I said, were you serious? And he said, yep. And I said, I'll be down Saturday. And I drove the 6 hours to his house and looked at the dog, said, yep, put him in my truck, drove him home. And he was just the best dog I've ever owned. He was just fantastic in everything. A powerhouse and a monster in the protection work. And then would lay on the floor and just lay on the couch and hang out with me all the time.
How rare is that? Because a lot of people who have working dogs, they're kenneled.
Yeah.
Right. How do you see? Is it common that people actually can? Because I don't want a dog if I can't live with them.
Yeah.
That's just a personal thing. That's one of the reasons why I decided I don't really want a top level competitive dog, because I want to live with all my dogs, hang out and stuff like that. Tell me about that, because you would know better.
Well,
how common is that? I
think it's getting more and more common because I think training methods have come around so much that there's a lot less conflict and a lot less, fighting with the dog. And so all my dogs come in the house. My youngest dog is 2, and I just did the IGB1 with him in November. He comes in, hangs out for an hour and a half or so before bedtime every night, and he's a little rambunctious right now, but he's settling down, and they have to learn to be in the house and hang out.
Yeah.
But when I'm at work, the Malinois is right behind me because I work at home, and the Shepherd's out in the kennel.
Yeah.
Because he would just go crazy in the house. And they're both strong, dominant males, so I don't let them out together
one
at a time. But both of them are out with the old female.
Yeah. And your Malinois that you have now, what's the Malinois name?
Ender.
Ender. And that dog came out of European lines, you're saying, right?
Correct. Yep.
And what do you see as the difference? Let's talk for a second and break this down. People love Shepherds. People love Malinois. There's people who love both, like you and me, but it's rare. Like Avi's a Shepherd guy.
Yeah.
He doesn't even know what Malinois are. He thinks they're coyotes.
Doesn't want 'em.
He doesn't want them.
Yeah.
He's shaking his head. He's having a conniption fit. From your side of it, tell me what's the difference? How do I tell the difference between a Shepherd and a Malinois? Why do I want one or the other?
I'm not sure I can answer that. I really can't, because they are very different.
Yeah.
And they both have very positive traits, and they both have negative traits.
For sure.
I mean, they're animals.
But let's talk about that, because I know what I like about them, and I love a lot of things about the Shepherds.
Yep.
But I love a lot of things about the Malinois.
Yeah, me too.
Right? What do you really, really love most about the Malinois?
My Malinois is, well, I love the energy and the drive, and they just want to work. You know, he'll lay there, be sound asleep, and I'll be like, okay, bud, let's go. And boom, he's ready to go, you know, redlining RPMs,
Right.
and he's ready. And he'll work like crazy, and then I can put him back, and he just chills out again. I don't know if that's typical with all Malinois, but it is with mine. And he's very like affectionate. You know, we always call him he's a social whore. You come to my house, he's going to be in your lap.
Right. Do you find the Malinois to be more socially friendly and engaging than the Shepherds?
Again,
Depends on the dog.
depends on the dog.
But your dogs.
And honestly, my dogs they're all friendly.
Yeah.
I mean, he's definitely more friendly and more pushy than my Shepherd, but anybody can go pat my Shepherd. Not like Avi's.
Yeah, come to my house, but don't look at my
touch him.
dog. Don't touch my dog. He loves that. He loves that
I know
stuff.
he
It's the
does.
funniest thing.
And I love it that anybody can walk up and pet mine.
Yeah. No, me too.
And then he'd be a
it's-
beast on the field.
Yeah. So is your Shepherd a less like? Okay, so what would you change about the Shepherd if you wanted to make it more beneficial for you? That's a tough one. Isn't
Yeah,
it, right?
I don't know if I'd change anything. They
Yeah.
are who they are, and
Right.
I love everything about them.
Could you pick, if you said, okay, I got to have one, I can only have a Malinois or a Shepherd, would you be able to pick one of those two?
Yeah, I'd probably stay with the Shepherd because
would.
I've had him I've been in the sport 28 years, and I've only had one Malinois.
Oh, only one?
Yeah, the one I have now is the only one I've ever had.
Wow.
I went to the FMBB, the Malinois World Championships, and I watched it, and I thought that Sunday was so intense. I'm like, wow, I really want to do that. Went home, and within 2 months, I had a Malinois.
Wow. And so the FMBB
And then I trained for 3 years, and then I make it, and COVID kills everything.
does suck, right?
Yeah.
It's ruined so much stuff.
Oh.
I mean, I can't even begin to talk about it.
And the dog, you know, he has a competition life.
Right, yeah. We'll talk about that. How long where do you see the best competition for dogs, especially at the level you're competing?
4, 5, and 6.
Okay. At 7, they start to go a little flatter.
You can see they get, well, no, it's not so that you need to manage. They start to get, maybe depending on the dog, they might get a little stiffer. You can't train them every day. So, you know, maybe the polish isn't quite as polished because you can't do it every day.
Right. So, and then before
because
that.
the way I train,
Right.
it's big about positive and it's about reps.
Okay.
I get 1,000,000 reps in. That's how he gets quick. That's how he gets precise. And that's how he stays happy and free in his work, because it isn't pressure. It's a lot of repetition.
Do you get that? Do you get those reps with your Shepherd as well?
Yeah,
You do?
for sure.
So you do train similarly with your Malinois as you do your Shepherd?
Yeah, similarly. I mean, the program, I always say, like, my program is like a 4-lane highway.
Okay.
And depending on the dog, you might be in the 2nd lane, or you might be in the 4th lane. You might be in the, you know, you might have to switch lanes as you go because every dog's different. But the way of thinking is always the same.
And that way of thinking, you like to, because you were talking about using clickers and using, but what I like is you said, I use a clicker, but I use an e-collar.
Yep.
And that balance, I think that's something that didn't exist a long time ago.
No.
And to a lot of people who aren't at your level, I don't think they understand that it can exist. That
I don't think they understand there's a low level on the electric,
Right.
some of them.
Yeah.
It's always full power. And
Yeah.
it's like, no, we don't need to do that.
But there's also those people who believe that it's all going to be positive and I'm going to wait for the dog to do the right thing.
And that doesn't work either, I
Doesn't work
find.
either.
Because a lot of times you see the dogs make mistake and they have no idea they made a mistake.
Right.
Because the handler just starts over again. And so for them, I do it 5 times and eventually you give me a ball.
Right. And they don't know which one of those 5 times meant anything, right?
And there's no learning.
Yeah. So using an e-collar, you said something upstairs, and I hate to have you repeat something you already said, but it was so powerful. The way you like to, and I'm going to get into the way you judge dogs, because that's something that's huge reason why I wanted to have you on the show. When you use the e-collar, you were saying something that you teach the dog, then you use this low-level stim, right, to kind of get the dog to understand what you want the dog to understand, and that there is an error.
Yep.
But you're not frying the dog.
No.
Right.
100%.
So talk about that, because that's so people always think e-collar, fry the dog.
Yeah. No.
And that's like not the way I think the tool was ever imagined to be used.
And there's also different e-collars. Different brand e-collars have different stimulation levels. And so I use one that has a much wider frequency, which is a milder stim, almost like you go to the chiropractor, they put the paddles on you, you feel units. The muscles. Yep. Yeah, almost like those. So there's a low-level collar from e-collar technologies that has that type of stim, and I use that for teaching. So to me, I always joke around and I say the clicker is positive, and then the stim is just my negative marker.
Right.
I mark the good behavior, but I also mark the bad.
I love that.
And it's not a punishment.
Yep.
It doesn't hurt them. They just feel it, and it's just communicating with them of what I want them to do.
Yeah. It's almost like one is a pat on the shoulder and one's a poke on the shoulder, right?
One's just a little annoying, like, hey, cut it out.
Yeah.
And then when I get to the point where, let's say we're talking about healing, and he looks away, and I give a low-level stim, and he, without me saying anything, snaps right back. I'm like, okay, now I know. Now he tells me very clearly that he understands what he should be doing. Now a correction is fair. And then I will go to a little higher level, And honestly, some of the collars I use, one of them is a dog tread. It goes from 0 to 127 levels. And Cliff was on 18 in obedience.
On a dog tread.
On a dog tread. Yep. And I can't even feel it till 12.
Yep. I talk about that because you're a mechanical engineer, so I want to run something by you, because I talk about this all the time with e-collars. There is that spiking. Yep. Like the old collars were just a shock. Yep. Bam. Right. The old, you change the cartridge and boom, you're just shocking the shit out of your dog.
Yeah,
right.
You change the plugs.
right. So now we've. I mean, the collars were originally very spiky, but I think e-collar and I think Garmin has that more rounded tens unit feel. When you put it on your neck, you're like, okay, it's contracting my muscles, and I'm getting some kind of. It's like a beeper. I'm getting a message. Yep. But I think it's so important to talk about that, the difference in the current, and being an engineer, you can really talk on that topic more so than I can, because I'm not an engineer.
I'm not, I'm a designer, but I'm not
but I'm
not an electrical though.
Right.
I do mechanical, but I know I think it has something to do with the frequencies, where a wider frequency band, say on an oscilloscope, would give a milder stim. Right. And the higher frequencies would give a sharper stim.
Right. And that's such an important piece that people don't get, that you should try it. Just try it on yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, every collar I've ever put on a dog, I've had on my arm or my neck first.
Me too.
And I think you can feel it. Right?
For sure. And I want to know where I feel it. And then I want to know where it needs to be for him. And, some people I think the higher the stim, the tougher the dog. And I just go, okay, well, look at Cliff. He was a great dog. He had a lot of power, and 18 in obedience and about 25 to 30 in protection.
That's crazy.
Right?
That's crazy.
That was it.
And he was a hard dog.
But
I don't mean hard. I mean,
what do you mean by hard?
Yeah. I mean, he was a hard dog. Like he could power through protection and take pressure.
Yeah, he was a monster in protection.
Right.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like the guy, he was getting a stick hit and he was cowering out. He was pushing through.
At the World Championships in the Netherlands, with probably the best helpers in the world, big, strong Dutch guys, the short ones are 6'6".
And they live in those small houses, right?
Yeah, with tulips outside.
Right, yeah, exactly.
But there was 150-something dogs, and only 4 got 96 or above, and he was one of them.
In protection?
In protection.
And how did he do in obedience?
94.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yep. And he was, and then he was on those levels, because that was the level I need. I only need to go high enough to make an impression.
Right. It doesn't matter what that number is.
I don't care.
Right.
And every dog's different.
And the difference in the numbers, for example, Dogtra goes to 127, and then Garmin goes to 18, and I think e-collar technology goes to like 100 or something.
Yep. E-collar goes 0 to 100, but they have more of a rheostat where it's smooth, whereas the Garmin's are click, 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 click.
Yeah.
And there's a new collar out now that's coming in from Europe called the Martin system that is also looks to be really cool. I haven't tried it yet, but
Yeah.
some friends of mine have it, and it actually, the stim ramps up as you go.
Yeah. I've seen that too. And
Yeah.
I think Greg at Ecology Technology was doing something with that too, where he had the ramp where you could hold it
Yeah.
and it would just ramp up.
Yeah, but I'm saying even in the levels, like 1 through 9 or a
Yeah.
lower level, and then when you get to 10, that's the yes sir,
Oh,
and
I
it starts
see.
going up from there.
Yeah, but that's great. I mean,
Yeah,
anything
sure.
that makes the job better for dogs.
And clearer.
And clearer. And I think that idea of using the positive marker as whether it's a clicker or a verbal or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I admire you for using a clicker because I've poo-pooed it a lot, but Janet uses it and has done an amazing job on her dogs with it. But balancing that and
Yeah.
really showing, and Janet's done it too with Dwayne on hunting. You know, we put an e-collar in now,
Yep.
so he understands, okay, that's not what I should be doing. He comes back, it's tons of praise, tons of reward, tons of that, and it's really changed his ways. So I love seeing it. And
I like to use the clicker when I'm teaching because I think it's very clear and it's I don't know, it's very clear to the dog and it's a very distinct sound. And then once the dog knows and there's different phases of training, and that's like the teaching phase. When I start to get into the like polish phase where he knows everything and now I'm trying to polish him a little bit to get him ready for competition.
Yeah.
Then I usually go away from the clicker and I go to a verbal marker, but I pair it with a touch. I always touch him on the cheek to release him. Yes. You know, or something like that.
A tactile.
Yeah, that way the judge doesn't go, you ready? I go, yes, and he goes running off somewhere.
Right. So you say you've been in the sport 28 years. So you were actually in the sport back when it was yank and crank.
Yeah, that's all any of us did.
Okay, so what was your epiphany? Like what made you go, I gotta get out of this. This is bullshit.
Well, there's a couple. The first one was on my knees with a 9-month-old, and I'm correcting him down the track, and the trainer that I was learning from is above me going, keep going, and my dog's looking at me like, I have no idea what you want, and I'm looking at him going, this can't be right. This just can't be right.
What year was that?
That was probably 97.
Okay.
And then I left that club, went to another club, then started learning there. And then around 2002, I walked into a AKC new place that just opened up 4 miles from my house down the street. And I walked in there, and there's a woman in there doing obedience with a bloodhound, and the ears are flapping and the head's straight up. And I'm like, I have a high drive German Shepherd, and he looks like a donkey, and I can't score over 83. And she's doing this with a bloodhound. And so I talked to her, and I started taking private lessons with her twice a week for about 18 months.
Wow.
And then she just, she had a little tiny pinch collar, a tug toy, and a clicker. And the dog was like,
boom.
A bloodhound was all up and giving her great obedience. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. And then, she had border collies too, and she went to Crufts multiple times to compete in obedience over there. And I was just like, okay, I need to learn this.
Check this out.
Yeah.
And after you took those classes, how did you transition that into your, especially with protection training? Because that's, I think, some place where people would say, well, it ain't going to work there.
Well, I think there's a lot of people. There's some good, like a couple people over here on the West Coast up in Oregon that are doing it. And I think people now in the sport are learning that it's much easier to try and teach. Like we try and take the dog out of the protection drive and teach them in a lower drive and break down the exercises into tiny pieces and then put them together when the drive comes up. And they already understand it. Like, for instance, our attack out of back transport, just for an instance. Well, first, in the old days, the helper turned around, walked away. The dog went crazy. We pronged him and tried to keep him with us until he turned around and attacked. Once we'd get him to stay with us, the helper would attack, and he'd go like, well, why do I need to stay? Right. Next time it'd be even worse. Right. So now we start with, maybe sitting and a ball on the ground, and we give him the foos, heel command, and then the transport. And he looks at it, we click, and he hits the ball. And then we start to walk, and we can walk backwards and forwards with him looking at the ball and click and do it. And then we transfer it over to a helper with maybe a pillow or a ball, and then the helper with the sleeve. And each one brings the drive up a little bit, yet we reinforce the behavior.
But you're working on the behavior first before you impose this pressure or the really high drive distraction.
Yeah, the high drive distraction, correct.
I love that.
Because they want that more than, breath, basically. Right. And so we try and teach it in a lower drive, and then we bring it up. It's, I have like same with dumbbells retrieves. I have a very specific 7-step process for training the hold, because I got to the point where I would teach him sitting here for food and he'd hold, and the hold would be perfect. And then I'd throw the dumbbell and the prey drive would go through the roof and he'd fly out, come back, and wood chips would be flying out of his mouth. And I'm like, what the hell am I doing?
Right.
So I actually drove 15 hours to Detroit, went to a seminar. A guy said, yeah, you're doing great. Just keep doing what you're doing. And I'm like, yeah, that's not really working for me and my dog. It works great for his dogs, but I needed something else. So I had a 15-hour drive home to think about it. And I started, what can I do? He holds it perfect out of drive, but in drive he doesn't. So then I started gradually, incrementally raising the drive until the end. When I'm at like step 7, I have a ball out and I'm making him miss the ball, and he's clack, 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 and then I hold. He bites it, holds it firm, click, now I can pay. Now he knows how to hold it and drive. Now he's ready for me to start to throw it.
I love it. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, rather than killing him for it.
Right. So there's a way you can handle dog, keeping the pressure back, keeping the drive back, shape the behaviors, reward the behaviors, and then incrementally bring it up, as opposed to just flooding the dog with that
Correct.
stuff.
And then they just lose their mind, and now you got to kill. Now they're killing them to do what you want.
Right.
Rather than I just incrementally raise it. So by the time the really high drive is there, which we want in the trial, he already understands what he's supposed to do.
I love it. So let's segue that into your position as a judge.
Yep.
I mean, you're pretty much God and jury, right? When you're in a trial, I mean, people are saying like, okay, what's in your mind?
I kind of think of it as I just keep score. It's my turn to keep score that day.
But it's what you're seeing, when you're not blinking, because you're seeing everything. I want to get in your head on the judging thing, because I'm fascinated by this objective position, because you seem like a guy who's going to be objective. You're not going to play favorites. You're really going to do this, and you're going to, I think, look for the best. Is this guy being fair to his dog?
Oh, 100%.
Right? Or is this guy just being an asshole to his dog and getting his dog through it? And that's something that I know was changing back when I was doing IPO, where they were starting to judge for the dog's workability. And they do it in AKC. I compete in AKC. And I think it's critical. I think it's so important for dog sports to continue and to actually flourish, that we look at the benefit of the dog in the sport, as opposed to just, yeah, of course the dog's going to do it. I'm going to fry him if he doesn't do it.
Yeah.
What are you looking for? Like, where are your eyes going? Let's look at obedience first.
Well, okay. So now when we go to the international judges meetings and the FCI judges meetings, and they emphasize the harmony of the handler and the dog, the willingness, the joyfulness of the dog, and the dog must be free in his work. He can't be pressured and tight.
What does it look like, though? What does that look like to you?
Well, I mean, pressured and it's kind of like
no,
pornography, right? Yeah. You know when you see it.
Yeah.
But I mean, the dog's like mouth might be open and he's up and he's and he's loading and he's prancing. And then other dogs might have the activity but still have the ears back, licking their lips, tails hanging, and their body is just tight.
Yep.
And he's not free. He's doing it. He's not stressed and pressured, but he should be freer.
Okay. So your body language, mouth
the
position,
dogs,
ear position,
correct.
Overall body
Tail,
position.
Tightness of their muscles, and, all this.
And do you see the ability of the dog to work happy in protection too? Like how common is that? Because that's a pressure for the dog, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the pressure should only come from the helper in the driving in the pressure phase, but in the obedience portion of it, I mean, you're not going to see it as much, because I don't care how good you are in obedience, the drive and protection for a good dog is much higher, much higher. So you won't see it as much. However, when you do see it, they went through a lot of pressure in the training, and you have to take something. But in the secondary obedience and in protection, it's secondary. You're still trying to judge and the genetic characteristics of the dogs also. And, at these meetings, sometimes they talk about it and they say, an excellent dog with excellent training gets an excellent score. An excellent dog with very good training gets a very good score. You must have the genetics and the training and the handler to get the excellent. It's supposed to be only 4% of, all dogs.
4% of all dogs can actually go to that level.
Well, yeah, because it's 96 or above. So they say, really, that's what it should be. The majority of the dogs should be good dogs.
Right.
They're good dogs with good training. Or they might be very good dogs with good training. Or you may squeak into very good with a good dog and very good training.
Right.
But you know, it's very difficult to get into the highest categories.
Do you see dogs flipping between maybe like let's talk about the pressure phases of protection where the secondary obedience comes in, like maybe a back transport, or what would you say? Where do you see that most?
Well, they should be switching drives throughout the entire protection routine between obedience, prey, and aggression.
Okay.
They should be switching through all of those. I mean, when they're biting, it's a lot of prey drive for the good, full, calm grip. And then during the guarding, there should be a good balance of aggression, not fear, but balanced aggression and power in the guarding. And then they should switch into obedience when the handler comes into the picture and calls them into obedience.
And on a good dog, do you see that as being pretty much seamless? Like it's just a switch, one goes to the other? Or?
Some of them. And I mean, some of the things like, for instance, when I went to the Malinois World Championships for the first time, it was kind of amazing. I was like looking for a gas cap going, these are not animals, these are machines. I mean, these dogs were amazing, the top 5 or 6 dogs in the world. And there they are showing power and everything. And the handler goes, sit, and they go, wow.
It's insane.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So the FMBB is a really big thing for Malinois. I mean, it's all Malinois pretty much, right?
Correct. It's the IGP World Championships, the Mondio Ring World Championships, obedience, conformation, agility. I forget the names of it. The one where they tie the rope to them and they run long distance. And so there's usually about 700 Malinois there, and they hold it all in one place. It's a great place to do shopping too, because the vendors are amazing.
Wow. And where is that usually held?
It's in a different country every year. Last year was supposed to be France. This year was supposed to be Greece. Usually Europe. But it's the same with the WUSV, the German Shepherd World Championships. But it's German Shepherd World Championships has been held in the United States 3 times.
In the history of it?
Yes.
Okay. And how long has the WSV been going on? The WUSV is called, right?
Yeah, I think the WUSV started in the 80s.
Okay.
I'm not sure. It started before me.
So at 40 years.
Yeah, 30, 40 years. But Schutzhund, which it all started from, the SV, are back into 1890s.
Right. So if we can talk about it, because I know it started as Schutzhund, which in Germany means protection dog.
Correct.
Then it went into IPO.
Correct.
Which, do you know what that stood for?
Utility dog.
Okay, utility dog. And then it went to IGP, which is
supposed to, and it's funny, I had this argument at one of the meetings, it's supposed to more closely translate to the utility dog in German. Okay. And I said, well, that's well and good for the 2 countries in the world that speak German. Everybody else doesn't care.
Yeah.
Stop changing the name.
I mean, that's the worst thing. Why do they keep changing the name?
We start to get a little popularity and they change the name and now nobody knows where it is again.
Yeah, that's happened so many times. Yeah. What's the difference between the dog sports? Like if you look at the sport, and I know there's a lot of concern about it because I think Europe was trying to be a little bit much easier on the dogs, like they were trying to take the stick hits out, right? It was a few years ago.
It's more the animal rights people really pushing on them.
And how does that affect the sport, do you think?
Well, there's only one country so far in the world that has banned the stick contacts.
Which is?
Austria.
Of all countries?
Yeah.
Right, the most humane country in the world in history. Yeah. That's pretty crazy. Yeah. But a lot of the countries are banning other things like prong. I mean, I know choke chains, right?
Prong and electric are banned in quite a few countries.
How does that affect the training in those countries, besides if the people do it anyway?
I probably shouldn't even say
that. I mean, in my opinion, I think people are going to keep doing it.
Correct.
As I would. I mean, in my opinion, if someone's going to ban the e-collar, I'm going to do it anyway because I think it's beneficial.
I can just say there are vendors that sell nice big ones that these mount inside. And they have finger kicks now. I don't know if you've seen them where the remote's in your pocket and you just got a finger. So, I don't know what they're doing over there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I would be the same because to me also when used properly, and I think that's one of the biggest problems is Europe still has the 1980s version of what an e-collar is, and they don't understand that. To me, this is the best training tool we've ever come up with for dogs because it's so clear and it's so unemotional. I mean, that's what I love is I'm not mad at you. You're just wrong.
Right.
And as long as I'm not killing you and I'm a low level, you're not getting upset either. You're like, oh. Yeah. And there was some university study that the highest retention with lowest stress was an e-collar for the dogs.
If you find that, I would love to have that.
I will find it because I have read it. And second was a pinch collar. And the highest stress with the lowest retention,
flat, verbal
and physical.
Yeah, okay,
because you're yelling at your dog. They're pack animals. They want to be with us, and they don't. My dogs don't want me to be mad at them.
Right. And I always said this through my work in shelters. I could never use an e-collar in the shelter. I always said the e-collar is so good because you can give no matter how upset I get, it's still the same button. It's still
I always say the same thing.
right?
It protects me from being a man.
Yeah, because I get pissed off.
I'm angry. I get stupid, and I do dumb shit.
Yeah,
but I can only push that button so hard.
That's it. And the thing is, too, I always think that the dog's over there.
Yeah.
So he's feeling pressure. It can't be me. It's
Right.
God telling you get back over here or pay attention to that guy.
Right.
And I mean, I would give anything to see that study because all these animal rights people, and look, I say plenty of dogs. I ran a nonprofit.
For sure.
I love dogs. I mean, to me, dogs are my life. But I want to be fair.
Yeah,
and
100%.
There's nothing more fair to a dog than fair communication. Because if I'm pissed, if I yell, if I'm upset about somebody on the phone, my dog's going, oh shit.
Yep.
And if I have to put that on the dog, and I've seen this with a lot of positive only people, not balance trainers, not like what we're talking about, but they're doing their positive, doing it, and then they get so pissed off, then they're kicking the dog.
Yeah, and how bad is that for the relationship?
Dumbest thing in the world, right?
You do it wrong 5 times, I don't do anything, and then I kill you.
Yeah.
That's super clear.
Yeah, really clear. It's wonder why your dog hates you.
Yeah, right. No wonder he doesn't go near you.
It's crazy. So you're judging the world championships, and you're
for German Shepherds.
For German Shepherds. Okay, so let's go back to the IGP, which we're talking about now. And you're going to be in Europe.
Correct.
As an American.
Correct.
Judging obedience.
Obedience.
For the World Championship WUSV, right?
Correct.
That's an amazing honor.
It is. I'm very honored.
Yeah. Now, first of all, how did you get into judging?
In 2004 or so, I don't know, wanted to give back, wanted to do it. I kind of looked at it that, I get to travel and meet people that love to do what I love to do. And it's just my turn to keep score. So I entered the program, and then in 2007, I got my license. Mm-hmm. And then I've judged probably 20 to 25 trials a year for about 10 or 12 years. And then the last couple of years, maybe since 17, I've done, 6 or 10 because I've been competing so much.
So you started competing. And were you at a very high level competing when you decided to get into the judging, or did they kind of coincide?
I was trying to get there.
Okay.
And I think actually going into the judging taught me a lot more about the picture that you want. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how much better you can score when you know the rules.
Mm. I mean, isn't it interesting how many people
know which
don't
ones
read
chase.
the rule book?
Yeah. Some points are not worth chasing.
Yeah.
And I look at people that train with me, I go, are you going to score 100 in obedience? And they go, no. I go, then why are you stressing over a half a point?
Mm-hmm. So let's talk about that, because certain things are like, there are small points.
Correct.
Give me that. Why are you stressing? What half a point would you be saying don't stress over that half a point?
Like right now for the IGP 3 level, a sit out of motion where you're healing and you tell the dog to sit and you don't even slow down and
that's right.
You just keep going.
Yeah.
And then come back. The new rules, it's now a 5-point exercise. So
the whole thing.
Huh. So if the dog sits a little slow, you make it very good. It's minus a half. Don't stress over it. Mm. Because now you're chasing a half or a quarter of a point.
Useless. And
you can turn that 94 into an 82 much easier than you can turn it into a 95.
Yeah. What else are those half a point things that people are seeing?
Well, I mean, there's all kinds of,
But, okay, so let's talk about something like a down on send away, right?
A send out with down.
Send out with
down,
right?
Yep.
So where are the points on that, for example?
Well, they break it down to the basic, the build up, and the going is half, and then the down and the pickup is the other half, 5 each.
Okay, so it's 15 points.
It's a 10 point, 5
10
each.
point. Okay.
So maybe if you're there's a good example. Mm-hmm. The dog is forging a little on the build up because he really wants to go. Don't kill him, because the next thing you know, he doesn't go and it's minus 10.
Okay. Wow.
Take it. Let him take a half a point if they want.
Okay, what's his points if he goes out and he starts looking back at you?
Well, there's no set deductions for that, but it goes into the overall picture. And it's at the judges. Does that knock it to very good? Does it knock it to good? Because you really judge in categories.
So it's excellent?
Excellent, very good, good, satisfactory, insufficient.
Okay, so there's 4 categories.
Correct.
And the points are within those categories. Like, what is it, 96 to 100 is?
Excellent.
Excellent.
90 to 95 is very good.
Okay.
80 to 89 is good. 70 to 79 is satisfactory.
Okay. And that's the overall score?
Correct.
So all
and
the
then each exercise has, like the send out with down is a 10-point exercise. Say he's looking back but still running, and then he downs, he should be a little faster. Maybe I say it's low good.
Okay.
-2.
Okay.
And you move on.
And so you're looking at the overall picture more so than that part of the exercise.
There's both.
Okay.
There's both. There's certain things that are mandatory. Dropping the dumbbell is -4. You know, going around a jump is -5.
Okay.
Not downing on the first command on the send out is 1.5. Second command, 2.5.
That's it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
If they stop.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, so
okay.
if he's running and I yell down and he jams on the brake, stops and stands there and looks at me, and I have to give him the down command again and he lays down, it's 1.5. If he ignores me and keeps going, then it's more.
Right? Okay.
No,
Still not insufficient.
It could be low satisfactory at best, but usually if he does that, there are other mistakes that gets it into insufficient.
right. Interesting. And so I think it's interesting too, because in AKC, and again, I did Mondio obedience to level 3 and IPO to 2. What I like about the IPO obedience, and it's something I would definitely love to go back into at some point with my next puppy, is the fairness of it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so precise.
Yep.
I mean, the AKC people always say, well, ours is more precise, but I beg to differ because it's big field. It's really beautifully done. I mean, the execution of IPO obedience, there's nothing like it.
Yeah, when you see a good routine, everybody knows it.
Yeah, it's so beautiful. But what you're saying...
We always say V is Versugle, which means excellent in German.
Yeah.
V's are easy to judge.
They are.
Because nothing went wrong.
Right.
They look great.
It's just beautiful to watch.
Exactly.
You know, it's one thing...
74, not so easy to judge.
Yeah, that's not so fun to watch. Right. But you are letting dogs, like, that you can use a double command.
Correct.
Right? You could, if the dog...
You just lose points for it.
Right. But see, in
they have
AKC, that's it.
NQ or DQ.
Totally NQ.
Yeah,
I've got plenty of those. Well, because my dog was trained to do IPO obedience, and in this tiny area, he would like go, I just went outside of the fence to get this or do whatever. But like on a dumbbell retrieve, so I throw the dumbbell, he goes out, he comes back. If he comes back around the jump, I lose 5 points, but I don't lose the whole thing.
Correct.
Right.
He must do one jump, and he must complete the retrieve.
Right. Okay.
If he brings it back, drops it at your feet, and you pick it up, you lose everything.
Then you lose everything. Okay, so he drops it at my feet, and I tell him bring, and he picks up and gives it to me.
Then you lose points for the second command. And the dropping, but you maybe lose all 15.
So if you're going to give somebody advice on who wanted, and I think people should do at least, and anybody with a German Shepherd can go in and do obedience in an IPO. For
sure.
Right? Do you think that's a good thing for people? I mean, I always advocate people to do it.
I mean, anybody who has a German Shepherd or anything else can go and do the BH, which is the companion dog test, where there is a portion of the IPO obedience, and then there's the traffic portion where they have interaction with people, interaction with dogs, interaction with cars, bicycles, joggers.
Other dogs, yeah. That's so huge.
And they have to show neutral to all of them. You can't be afraid or aggressive. And otherwise, you're disqualified. It's a giant temperament test. And I think it's awesome.
It's hands down the best temperament test I've ever seen because it just really gets in there. When you judge a BH, how many of the dogs do you see that aren't really getting it? Like that might
you see a lot of bad obedience, but then they might get to the traffic portion and you see this is a great dog and they squeaked by obedience, but the temperament is fine and they get through it all and okay, you passed.
Yeah. Because it's pass or fail, the BH, right?
Correct.
There's no score on it. Really.
There are points, but there's a cutoff. It's a 60 points. 42 is the cutoff. You get 42, you pass, and all you get in your book is passer. Pass or not pass. We don't like to say fail.
Right. That's good. Do you think that, and any breed can do it, right? I mean, they just have to. Sure. They can't have a.
I've judged a Yorkie.
In a BH?
In a BH, sure.
Are you serious?
Why not? Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But it's a much more intensive test because I don't think you can really compare it to the CD test in AKC.
No, it's more than that.
It's a lot more.
Yeah.
I mean, if your dog has a BH, it's a pretty nice dog.
Sure.
You know, you got a pretty good dog, and you can go from there.
Sure.
What's your main takeaway on sports as far as the seriousness of it? Like what advice you give people? Because you're again saying you should really love the dog, you should really enjoy the dog.
Yep.
You get a dog, it's not going to work out for the sport. What's your?
Well, I always tell people, just because it's not a great sport dog doesn't mean it's not a great dog.
Yeah, I love that.
Right? They can still be a great dog at home, and Sometimes people will stay. I've had people stay in my club and they'll do just the tracking titles, or they'll do just the tracking and the obedience titles because the dog didn't really have it in protection. And then they kind of get hooked, and the next thing you know, they have another dog, and that dog can do it.
Yeah.
And they're there. Because a lot of times people find our sport, they get a German Shepherd, and they start searching on the internet, and, hey, what's this Schutzhund stuff? And they start reading it, and my dog's parents all have Schutzhund titles and all this, and then they come to the sport, and their dog really just can't do it.
Mm-hmm. So what happens with those dogs? Like, what do you think is mainly the component when
I would say 90% of the time with a situation like that, either the people leave the sport and they don't come back, or maybe they come back later, or they maybe do the BH and do some of the other ones, start to feel it and start to like it, and they get a second dog.
But what's the main thing that when you see the dog as failing, that's Dwayne Mater, where do they fail mostly? Do you think it's nerves? Do you think it's bad training? Do you think it's a combination?
Yeah, I mean, like, usually it's nerves.
It is nerves, right?
Yeah, the dog's bad nerves or bad breedings. And I mean, we can say whatever we want, but the problem, a big issue in this country is there's no breeding regulations for anything.
So I want to talk about that. I'm glad you brought that up, because in Germany, your German Shepherd's pregnant and somebody's knocking on the door with a pad like, hey, your dog's about to have puppies, right?
Yeah.
Because everything is documented.
You have to have at least an IGP-1 and a breed survey for the puppies to be recognized.
So how do you think people are breeding dogs that in Germany that don't have that? How does the SV handle that?
The SV won't recognize it.
Okay. So
they have 1 year from the time the puppies are done to get the title. Or the puppies don't get papers.
So the title's on the adults?
Yes.
Oh, so they can do it. They can do it post pregnancy.
Yeah. Say you had a female and she was going along and she got her BH and you're getting close, but you didn't want to miss the heat. Then you could do it as long as they get it within a year. You can get the. I believe that's the way it is.
And the regulation is IGP-1?
Yeah.
Both parents?
Yes.
Okay.
And breed survey.
And breed survey. And so let's.
But if one of them doesn't have a breed survey, I think you can get a white paper, and that can be upgraded. There's a whole bunch of it. But the point is, they must have hips and elbows.
Right.
Passing hips and elbows, and then they must have this. So some sort of training, because I do think I think the SV just came out with a new minimum requirement that might be a different test, like a breed suitability test. Maybe it isn't the whole IGP anymore.
What's the breed survey? What's in that?
The breed survey is you must have, to go to breed survey, I just did it in November with my young shepherd, you must have at least IGP-1, an AD, which is a 12.5 mile endurance, then a show rating, and then you go to the breed survey. And in the breed survey, they do a couple bites, and then they do all the measuring,
right,
and teeth and testicles and all that. And then the Coremeister, the breed master, awards them either recommended for breeding or not.
Okay, so it's one or the other.
Yeah, it used to have two different levels. There used to be Core Class 1 and Core Class 2, which was recommended for breeding and acceptable for breeding. But maybe 10 years ago, they went to just, you can either breed or you can't.
So the KKL is gone.
It's just KKL.
That's it.
It's no longer KKL 1 or 2.
Oh, it's not? Okay,
yeah,
so it's just KKL.
It's just KKL.
Or zero.
Or nothing. Or you shouldn't be here.
Which I think is really good.
Yeah, sure.
But do you think the AKC...
At least you have something. AKC, they paid $10 or $15, whatever it is now.
That frustrates me.
Yeah.
What would
because
be...
I see people, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No.
I see people that are like, oh, I love my dog. I can't wait to breed him. And I'm
Nothing
like,
worse.
Yeah, but he has no hips. He has no elbows. He's missing teeth. He's got one testicle. Why are you one? Right. Yeah, he's a great dog.
He's
great.
really sweet. Yeah.
He's a great puppy. He's a great pet.
Right.
Leave him alone.
Right. Yeah. Just let him be and just get another puppy when you're ready to get another
Correct.
puppy. Right?
You'll get another one. If you do your research, you'll get another one.
Pretty close.
Yeah. You'll love for different reasons.
Yeah. So the breed survey, I know there's 2 or 3 bites. Isn't it like a bite out of a blind?
Yeah,
or
there's
something?
an attack where you're healing and the man jumps out of a hiding spot and runs straight at you, and the dog has to engage with no command.
And
then a long attack.
So there's a long bite.
Yep, there's a long bite and an attack out of the blind. Those are the 2 grips.
Now, so let's talk just a minute about the difference between a show line and a working line. Because you would be the person that I would love to get your input on this on. There's a lot of really nice show line dogs.
For sure.
Right.
I saw one last weekend in Kansas.
Okay.
Long coat.
Okay.
Came like a monster.
Really?
A long bite. Yep.
And it was a show line.
Long coated show dog.
Wow. But that's rare to see, right?
Yeah, but sometimes I think people dumb down the show dogs. I mean, I had a female show dog in my club, and the woman just was like, I don't care about being a show dog. We're going to train her like a working dog. And she went out and did 95 in protection at the Schutzhund 3 level.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
Because she just trained it that way. I think sometimes they dumb them down, and then sometimes they don't have the drive and they don't have the heart.
But don't you think also that sometimes people get a show line dog and just think they're going to be able to do it, and it just can't?
Correct. Yeah.
And that's just so unfair to the dog.
For sure. Sometimes it is. And I've had that difficult discussion with people where I've said, your dog thinks this is real. Mm-hmm. She is very stressed and fighting for her life every time she does bite work. She's not having fun. You're going to shorten her life. And I try and explain it to them like that. Then usually they go, oh, well, I don't want to do that. But if you just tell them they don't have it, then they go, well, I want to try. She's doing good. But when you explain to them that your dog is really stressed doing this.
Yeah.
My dog loves to bite.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Your dog is fighting for his life and thinks he's about to die.
That's such a big piece because I think I've never heard it put that well. You know, people say, oh, the dog is a show dog. He doesn't have the nerves or he doesn't have suitability. But you see these dogs when they're fighting, it's life and death.
They're afraid.
They're scared to death and they're biting to kill. They're just like, it's not a game.
Yeah, it's not fun for them.
Yeah. And I mean, that's to me, when I see a dog who loves it, they're just having a blast. I mean, just like, they're laughing, they're coming in, they're ready. And when it's over, when the bite is over, the next fun thing happens.
Correct.
Right? As opposed to like, oh my God, I'm done with this.
Thank God.
Yeah, thank God. Thank
God he stopped.
Yeah. What's your take on that? And how do you see dogs getting messed up by putting too much of that pressure on the dog, especially at a young age?
A lot of people, you can absolutely ruin a really good dog by putting too much pressure on them at a young age. And I'll give you an example. In my club, a lot of times we'll have a female, or I have a good friend of mine right now. He's got a really nice young female. And I just told him, you know, she's barking, biting, doing everything we want her to do. Now, the next part is we have to start to push some pressure and let her start to feel a little bit more of a fight. And mentally, she's not ready for it yet. Okay. So we work her once in a while just to have some fun, and you do obedience and tracking and come and hang out, and we'll give her a little break until her brain grows up a little bit, and then we start to gradually add a little. And I don't mean hitting them. I just mean like, pressure. You know, posturing and, you know, hey, you're coming to fight me.
Right.
You're not coming to bark for a cookie.
Right. But you're making that an attainable goal for the dog.
Correct. Right? And you have to wait till they're mentally ready to deal with it. It's like saying, okay, I have a 12-year-old boy who's got a black belt in karate, but now stick him in the MMA ring with a 26-year-old.
Right.
I don't care how good he is or how much of a phenom he is at karate. He gets in that ring with a 26-year-old man, he's going to be scared shitless.
Yeah, for sure. Right? And it's going to ruin him in the future.
And it'll ruin him if he takes a beating over and over again. He's going to be done. Whereas if you just held him back, maybe at 21, he's a monster and wins the world championship.
I love that. Yeah, I mean that's so important. And the reason I said that about because I took Goofy back and forth with a couple different clubs, and some people said it was actually a ring sport guy who said introducing him to that pressure lower it was just better for him.
Yep.
You know, maybe some dogs had that, but it's just interesting to see what you're talking about, this development of really bringing it up slowly. And this other buddy of mine, Danny Craig, I don't know if you know who he is, actually talked about that. Yeah.
Malinois guy. Yeah, I know Danny.
Yeah,
Temple of the Trees.
Temple of the Tree, yeah.
Yep.
And it was one of the most valuable things he said to me. And sadly, he said it to me too late, but he said, man, you know what? I take these dogs at a young age and I'm hitting them with a noodle. I'm playing with them. I'm having fun with them, as opposed to putting this pressure on. And I mean, I've seen personally, not a lot, but several dogs get ruined by let's put pressure on them.
Sure.
But it's a little kid, right? It's a little kid in karate. Okay, you got your black belt, you punch him in the face.
Yeah.
You got a black belt? Yeah. Now the kid's like, man, I'm never fighting again, right?
100%. That's exactly what I'm saying.
And it's just a good way
now
to
that kid is like, whoa, no. Whereas before he was walking around like a peacock, you know, like, I'm doing really good.
Yeah, and that piece is the piece that can take a dog from a regular dog to a superstar dog when he has that confidence with the courage, with the ability, right, with the breeding.
For sure. And we always say, you know, you can't train heart.
Can't train heart.
If he's got that heart, you can ruin it when he's young, but you can't create it.
Yeah, that's so true. So what's in the future now? What do you got going on? I know you're in town for a trial.
Yeah, I'm judging the Southwest Regional Championships here in Ojai, Saturday and Sunday.
We're coming. Jan and I will be there.
Awesome. It'll be great. It'll be fun. I think it's going to be a good time.
Yeah.
And then next weekend, I'm in Knoxville for just a club trial where they're earning titles.
Okay.
And then I'm home for a while till I prepare my dogs, and I'm judging the USCA Working Dog All Breed National Championship the end of the month in St. Louis.
Okay.
And then I'm just working on my dog. There's a FCI World Team Qualification Trial is in Pennsylvania in end of June, I think it is, and I'm going to compete with my Malinois. And I want to put the IGP2 on my Shepherd, and then I'm going to do the regionals and hopefully get him to the nationals in the end of October.
How do you get on the world team? What's the process to do that?
For which?
The FCI.
For the FCI, you have to be one of the top 6 at the all breed qualification trial.
And they have qualified because FCI is just in Europe, though, right?
No, it's worldwide.
Oh, it's worldwide.
There is no FCI member, but the AKC is the FCI recognized registry.
Okay, so if you're
because of their contract partnership, USA the United States can send a team.
So that goes to the AKC?
No, that's some really messed up dog politics going on right now. So, but technically yes, but it doesn't really. It goes through the AWDF.
Oh, the AWDF. Okay, so you're going for when you're taking your dog, you're going for protection.
All 3 phases.
All 3 phases.
Yeah, you have to do all 3 phases, and the top 6 dogs in the competition will go to the FCI World Championships, which is also all 3 phases.
And that trial. Those trials, the qualifying trials, are here in the States.
Correct. This one's in Pittsburgh. Pennsylvania.
Okay, and you're going with your Malinois. Okay,
correct.
So you're shoo-in to go.
I don't know about that. Anything can happen. Anything can happen.
Yeah, you got to think positive.
Yeah, but they are animals. Anything can happen.
Is that the wildest thing?
And sometimes, luck of the draw. You draw Saturday tracking, and it's little dew on the ground and nice and calm air, and then I draw Sunday tracking, and it's raining sideways with 40-mile-an-hour winds.
Yeah. So you're looking forward to, so the regional trials, the people from the regional trial can go to the nationals, right?
Correct.
And then from the nationals, you go to the worlds.
So for the German Shepherds, the top 5 at the nationals and the top 5 German Shepherds at the All Breed Championship, the Working Dog Championships, go to the WUSV qualification trial. So there's 20 dogs in that trial, and the top 6 go to the worlds.
Wow. From each country?
From each country.
Qualifying. So how many people will be at the FCI World Games?
At the World Championships?
Yeah, the World Championships.
About 160.
Wow.
Between 140 and 160.
And that's not what you're judging, though. You're judging.
No.
You're judging.
That's the one I came in second twice.
Okay. That's amazing.
And then I'm judging the WUSV, which is the German Shepherd World Championships, and they're about the same size.
Okay. That's amazing. And those are just German Shepherds? Just
German Shepherds.
Does any Malinois ever enter?
They can't.
They can't enter?
No, it's the German Shepherd World Championship.
So
just like the FMBB is the Malinois World Championships. There's no German Shepherd.
Okay.
Yeah.
But in the U.S., in the championships, Malinois can win.
The all breed, he can.
Okay.
The German Shepherd National Championships, they can't enter. There's just 60 or 70 German Shepherds.
And how does
just like the Malinois National Championships, the AWMA National Championships are only Malinois.
Right. Okay. So nobody else can enter.
No.
And you have to be a Malinois.
Yeah.
Papered.
And you have to be a member of AWMA.
Right.
Just like the USCA German Shepherd National Championships, you must be a member of USCA and have a German Shepherd.
Yeah. But you can join the Schutzhund USA with a Malinois, but you have to be a member of the AWMA
to go to the because AWMA is the Malinois club.
Yeah.
You can join USCA with a Malinois, and you can enter the USCA National All Breed Championship, the Working Dog, which I'm judging the end of this month. But you can't enter the German Shepherd National Championship.
This is going to be really great information for some people. The
other people are going to go like, who cares?
What's he talking about, right? Because it's too confusing.
Too many acronyms.
Yeah, way too many, but it's interesting. This is just an amazing talk. I mean, really intriguing to me. I mean, I love dog sports, and it's something I'm so passionate about.
Yeah, me too.
And I see that. And it's rare to find. I mean, Avi was a great guest because he's just a character.
Yeah. Avi's Avi.
Avi is Avi. But if you're ever in town again, come back.
Oh, I would love to.
I'll give you an open anytime you're here.
Yeah.
And if I'm in New England, tell me the name of your club.
Southern New Hampshire Working Dog Club.
Okay, and that's in New Hampshire,
Correct.
obviously, right? So
Yeah.
you got a website and stuff. Can I put a link
Yeah.
to it? Okay.
Yeah, sure.
I'll put a link to it. You're probably going to get bombarded with questions, but
To question me, it's probably best to find me on Facebook and just message me.
okay, Facebook.
Yeah,
Okay, so I'll
for
put a
sure.
link to your Facebook profile.
Perfect.
As well as your club if they're up there looking for some good training. So
Great.
all right, well, thanks for being here.
Awesome.
It's a great
It was
talk,
fun.
and it's one of my favorite interviews. Thanks for
awesome.
doing it.